Okay. Welcome to the Maine Planning Basics webinar series. My name is Tom Mariola, and I'm Senior Planner with the Municipal Planning Assistance Program at Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry. Hopefully the sound is good here. I don't like I got a transcript occurring on the right. That's a little annoying. Okay.
Yeah,
These
I'm not
webinars,
sure
what's
this.
that?
I don't know how you make this one slide at a time.
So we're only seeing one slide. At least I'm only
Okay,
seeing one slide. So
good, good.
you might be in good shape.
Okay.
These monthly webinars are intended for those that are new to planning. A reminder that these sessions are recorded and sessions are posted on our website. I'll post a link shortly to that page so folks can go just see where the link is and familiarize themselves with it. Also feel free to send in future suggestions for presentations. You can just put it in chat or you can email it to me directly. I would like to thank Abe Daly for coordinating these sessions for the past year. Abe has moved on from state service, currently trying to fill the position. Reach out anytime if you reach out to Joan. The current deadline was yesterday for that position, but we may or may not need to re-advertise. I don't think we know at this time. Today we're joined by Terry Ann Holden, Maine DECD Development Program Manager for the Community Development, and she's going to talk about the Community Development Block Grant Basics. And after that, we will have Brandy Piers, Maine DEP Environmental Engineering Services Manager. She'll be talking about Clean Water State Revolving Fund. And questions, feel free to ask questions at any point. Anyone here can turn off their mic, turn the camera on and off, come and go as they please. Ask a question either in chat or, as far as I'm concerned, right out in the open if you want to ask a question at any point. We blocked off an hour and a half for these. In the past, we tried to keep it around an hour with questions and everything, sometimes with the potential for things to drag on if they need to. So Terry Ann, take it away.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know, the Office of Community Development is part of DECD, and we facilitate the Community Development Block Grant Program for the state, which means we get the funding from HUD, and we have an allocation, usually around $11 million, and we divide that money up into a variety of different programs. So we have housing, infrastructure, business assistance, community enterprise. We have a two-step process. The first step being what we call letter of intent, which lets us know what community is applying for what project, and we look to see if it's an eligible project. If we think it's a good fit for CDBG, we invite people to submit a full application. However, when you are thinking about putting together an application, especially if you are thinking about public infrastructure or perhaps downtown revitalization, you want to start thinking about planning for that about a year in advance. For many of our programs, we require things ahead of time, such as a income survey. So the public infrastructure is a very competitive program. We always have more applications than we have dollars to fund them. And we have started a few years back taking infrastructure applications every other year. We typically fund about 3, maybe 4 of those, and then the others we queue up for the next year's funding. If you are thinking about a sewer or water main extension, one of the things you need to keep in mind is that whatever you're doing has to comply with Public Law 776, which means your new infrastructure needs to be in a designated growth area that's defined in your adopted and consistent comprehensive plan. So one of the things you'll need to do if you're either doing downtown revitalization or infrastructure is define your geographic area for your project, because that will help you in determining your income survey universe. If we're doing infrastructure, we will need to have a survey of the users that are either in that area where you're extending or replacing lines. If you're doing plant upgrades, you will need to have all of the users on the system. And it does take time to do a very good survey. You will need to do some preliminary advertising, maybe local newspaper stories, let people know what you're going to be doing, why you're asking for this information. It takes time to actually get all of the required surveys, to get them tallied. You'll need to have your local economic development agency or your community programs at AVCOG, KVCOG, NMDC review and make sure that your income survey was done correctly, and they'll sign off. So we also will need cost estimates for whatever project you think you want to do. You'll need to be able to figure out what is it you need to do, especially if you're doing, let's say, water sewer. You'll probably be working with an engineer, and you'll need some estimates either from the engineer or on a contractor's letterhead that you can provide with your application, so we can have a good idea of what your costs are expected to be. It's pretty much the same if you're doing downtown revitalization. You'd want to think about costs if you're doing sidewalk repair or replacement, or if you're adding streetlights. You'll need to get cost estimates for whatever those activities are that are part of your project. The other thing we want to see is that you've looked at other sources for funding, especially if you're doing infrastructure. These projects tend to be very expensive, and we're often one piece of the larger puzzle with people like Brandy and the DEP, perhaps rural development folks or the drinking water program. Some communities are able to do some bonding, and your project's application will look better if you have done your research with these different funding sources and determine if you're eligible for funding from some of those folks. And if you have a commitment from them, because when you submit your application, we will be looking to see that you have your other funds lined up. So once you've gone through these other resources and your ideas are exhausted, look at the CDBG as filling that funding gap. One of the first steps, if you are going to move forward on a project, the letter of intent is the first thing that gets submitted. It's emailed in, doesn't cost you anything. However, CDBG has to go to and through a unit of general local government. So if you're a utility or an economic development group, you'll want to work with your community, your selectmen or town managers, because they will be facilitating the letter of intent. It's going to tell us what the community is, what the project is that you want to do. If you're working with an architectural or engineering firm, what are your cost estimates? And a big thing is, how do you meet the CDBG national objective requirements? 70% of our dollars have to go for things that benefit low to moderate income people. That's why we ask you to have a survey. We do have a number of communities in the state that have over 51% low to moderate income of population, and those communities are eligible for some things without having to do a survey. But oftentimes with your infrastructure, you're looking at a specific targeted area. So that's where that will come into play. We try to get back to those people who submit a letter of intent as quick as we can. One of the things that's important is before you send in your letter of intent, you want to talk to one of our staff, because we do require what we call DPM name and a date of consultation. DPM is a development program manager. So we have a chance to talk to you to figure out, is the project that you want to do something that would fit with CDBG? Do you have your survey? Do you know that you're going to meet that required LMI threshold? Do you have your cost estimates? Have you reached out to other funding sources? Because we will say, if you haven't done that, please see what you can do with other funding sources first. Now, we do say you have a deadline and don't be late, because we cut that off usually at 4 p.m. on a Friday. The following Monday morning, we'll go through everything that's in that letter of intent email box. You can submit it early. Don't wait till the last minute. You want to make sure that you have your stuff in, it's emailed just in case something happens and the internet is down. So once you've been approved with your letter of intent, then we will invite you to come in with a full application. We often send an email to the town, the person who has submitted the letter of intent, and we also try to follow up with a letter via hard copy to let them know, if you have submitted a letter of intent and you don't hear something from us in 10 days, call me. Let me know. Maybe it's sitting on somebody's desk. When we do get those applications, you've got 3 key sections that are very important for you to complete. The first being the impact. And I will tell you, the most important thing in that is your very first sentence needs to say what it is you're doing. Like, Town of Springvale is requesting $500,000 to replace water lines on Main Street. So that right away, we know what it is you're doing and we don't get overloaded with all kinds of statistics and data and have to kind of fish for what it is you need and want. So it's very important in your impact section that you tell us, what is the problem? How was it discovered? What happens if you don't fix it? And a big key, how does it affect low to moderate income people who are going to be impacted by that project? That, keep in mind, community development block grant. You need to hit on that community piece. And how many people are affected? The more people are affected, of course, we're looking at how big a bang for the buck are we going to get? Then you really need to tell us why that CDBG grant is necessary. Is the utility in debt so far they can't take on additional debt? Have you taken on loans from DEP or RD? You can't bear anymore. You have this gap you need to fill. Make sure to describe why you need those funds, how important it is to getting your project off the ground. Then developing the strategy. This is where you tell us exactly, where is that CDBG money going to go? What are you going to be spending it on? And give us a feel for the time frame, because as we're evaluating these applications, no matter what program you're in, we want to know, how fast are you going to be able to get your program off the dime and get your money out the door? So that's very important piece for us. We also look to see, how is this strategy that you've come up with going to improve the lives of those low to moderate income people? Also, we'll have a page in the application, which is the budget review. You want to list all of the sources that you have to fund this project. And at that application stage, you want to make sure that you have these other sources fully committed so that we know if we add that block grant money in, you're going to be able to move that project forward fairly quickly. Now, one of the things that people often don't get where they should be as far as points is in that citizen participation thing. Remember, community development block grant. You need to have your community or the universe where your project is going to be involved in what you're doing. So how did you discover there was a problem? Was it because citizens were complaining? Were you getting phone calls about sewer backups or other issues or brown water? Believe me, we've seen a lot of that. So tell us how those people who are going to be served by the project were involved, and how many meetings have you had? Did you talk about this at several board meetings? Has the select board discussed this a number of times? Have you had newspaper articles about what's the problem is and how you're going to address it? Do you have local cable TV channel? Have you taken advantage of that? Any and all resources that you have to let the public know what the problems are and give them an opportunity to comment, those are going to help you get those 20 important points. It's really critical. So our process is such that you can submit the letter of intent via email anytime prior to the due date. We get you confirmation. Then if you don't get a confirmation, it means we didn't get your letter of intent or your application. So you want to make sure that when you submit something to us, you get a response back. And if you don't, call me, email me, let me know. We don't want some important project that could have been funded to miss the opportunities. So here's information. I'm happy to talk with anybody about their project at any point in time and happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry Ann. Questions, so folks can feel free to pipe up. I know I have a few.
Sure.
I guess, and again, this is the first time Terry Ann and I have met face to face. So I guess you'd call this face to face. You mentioned, we always talk about sewer. And so obviously most towns in Maine don't have sewer. And so and I don't know if much has changed through the years, but what other types of projects do you typically fund other than sewer?
We fund water mains, water lines, water treatment centers. We do community things like community enterprise, which is facade programs in your village or downtown. We do facade projects, improving the buildings, the commercial buildings, historic buildings. That's a very popular program. And we do what we call streetscapes, which is repairing or replacing sidewalks, street lighting, some curbing, storm drains.
Do you still do get involved? You do fire stations, town office, community centers, stuff like transfer stations?
Well, because we have been cut so severely from what we were many years ago, we used to have what we call public facilities, which covered those fire stations and community centers and things like that, libraries. So right now, we don't have a public facilities program. We do address some facades on things like libraries or making things handicap accessible for libraries or for town offices that are 51% or more low to moderate income. But we think we've covered a lot of the fire stations. So we haven't been doing many of those lately.
Okay. How often are your deadlines? And grow in because this is a big comp planning crowd in some regards.
Yes.
All projects need to be in the growth area. You specifically mentioned sewer, but
if you're doing an extension to your sewer main, sewer system, or water systems, those things are considered growth-related capital investments. So we look to do those in a growth, in your determined growth area. You folks at the local level determine that in your approved consistent comp plan. Other things such as streetscape work, facade work, we do public service things, those would not have to be in the growth area. Other things like replacing existing lines, existing storm drainage, doesn't apply with the comprehensive plan stuff. So you're fine with that.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? I see a chat here. Give me 1 second. I didn't have chat up. So, James, would public Wi-Fi systems be eligible public infrastructure project?
We haven't funded any of those yet. Our focus would need to be on an area where 51% or more of the folks who would be accessing that would be low to moderate income people. That's where you'd need to have like a 51% low mod community or a target area that you've defined that you've got a survey for, which would show that the users would be 51% or more low to moderate income.
All right. Any other questions? That was much, much quicker than I thought. So yeah, anyone can feel free to ask questions. Terry Ann's contact info was on the last slide, which will be posted on our website shortly. No more questions. I suppose, Brandy, if you want to pull up your PowerPoint. Thank you, Terry Ann. Before we jump over to Brandy, I just want to talk, I want to kind of self-promote for next month, 1 month from today. Our next session, quite a different. I'm actually a little excited about this one. So a question, anyone that's been a planner in Maine for more than a day has gotten the question, how do we get volunteers? And so through the years, I've always just thrown out sort of childish responses, buy pizza, put it on Facebook, just very very rudimentary. So we've reached out to Volunteer Maine, the Commission for Community Service. Michael Ashmore is going to present at the March 7th one. And just to give you, there are professional people out there that do nothing but recruit volunteers and train volunteers. Michael's going to talk about things he's mentioned is there's a Maine Municipal Association partnership on green jobs that they're just starting. He has a pathways from community service to the workforce. He has a service fellows program. This is all new to me. He has training options available for volunteers and for you guys for recruiting volunteers. And he also has a brand new, the potential for an AmeriCorps support for the towns, for communities. There's a question I got from a town 2 weeks ago up in Penobscot County, and I didn't have an answer. So hopefully this is something that can give myself and you guys answers to how to recruit volunteers. And again, send us ideas for future sessions. Brandy is here. Brandy, feel free to take it away.
Okay, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yep.
All right, very best. Okay, everyone. Thank you again for inviting me, Tom, to talk to everyone about wastewater infrastructure and planning and how we get going on this. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys a little bit about this today. If at any time you guys have questions, feel free to hit the raise hand button or put it in the chat and Tom will notify me. Anyway, a little bit about myself, my background. Yes, I am a civil engineer. I have an engineering background in construction and bridges and roads and water and wastewater projects. I've got over 20 years of experience, and I went from originally working out for a contractor, doing those 80-hour weeks, to in working for the state. So it's been really rewarding for me. And I moved up through the ranks, and now I'm the Clean Water State Revolving Program Manager for the state of Maine. So, as I'm told, we have planners here and town managers and board members on board here. So let's talk about how we come up with a project. How do you plan a project? How do you design a project? Are you going to do the design, or are you going to hire somebody else? Who will help me with the construction? How do I fund it? How do I find money? All of these things as a planner, you have to think about. And of course, we have to plan for the future. What's going to happen in the future? How do I take care of my infrastructure? So let's think about this as we go along. How to plan a project. Okay, let's start with, did you check with your community protocols? Do you have something in your specific town that prevents or helps you to plan a project? As a new planner or a new town manager, you need to look into that right out of the gate of your project. Do you need to reach out to the Department of Environmental Protection? Is there an inspector that is assigned to your community? Things that you should know. We're here to help, and we're here to listen to what your needs are. As much as some people might not think, DEP is actually really good at listening. We'll meet with you. We'll set up a meeting and talk to you and your upper management about next steps and how we go forward. So let's think about the project itself. Okay, somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I have a project. All right, let's start thinking about some considerations here. The proposed project, what is it? Is it a street rehab? Is it a wastewater line that needs to be replaced? Is it a stormwater line that needs to be replaced? What are some of the things we got to think about here? What about time frame? Is this project, does it have to be done in the next 30 days, 6 months from now? Or is this project going to take 2 years to develop and get underway? Who's responsible, and what are the roles that each individual needs to play in this project? Those are big questions that we need to answer as planners. The next thing is, do we need an engineering firm? Well, in the state of Maine, anything over $100,000 needs to be stamped by an engineering firm. Some of these little things that you may or may not know. We can help you to find the right engineering firm for your community based on your needs. And then funding. Okay, I have this project. I have to replace a sewer line. I have no idea how much it's going to cost. All right, well, who do I call to kind of get a quick estimate on what I'm thinking about and how long it's going to take? All stuff we can help. And when you have DEP involved, you got to think, what is DEP's roles? Well, of course, first and foremost, all of our projects, we like to make sure that they're improving water quality or protecting water quality in the area. We're providing funding for wastewater projects and stormwater projects and climate adaptation plans and asset management plans, all sorts of projects that you could just imagine that would protect or improve a water quality in your area. We're going to take on the responsibility and role of helping you through doing an environmental review. Is there going to be an impact to doing this construction? We're going to look at reviewing and approving documents. We're going to look at plans and specifications. And we're going to take on responsibility and roles to help you approve construction contracts, because many planners and town managers don't have a degree or a background in the knowledge of what a good construction contract is going to look like. So you should rely on us to help you, because we're here for your benefit and we're free. So I said project documents. Okay. Yes, we're getting into the weeds a little bit. However, facility plans. Do you have one? Preliminary engineering reports. Do you need one? Do you have a preliminary design? Final design, plans, specs, engineering agreements, fiscal sustainability plans, which are like asset management plans. All of these things are maybe confusing to some of you and maybe something that you've known about for a long time. But these are all things that we can explain in much more detail with you and help you through the process. We don't want you to feel like you are left alone in a project without a lot of help or any references to guide you through the construction of a project. So I mentioned plans and specifications. We look at what's utilizing the EJCDC standard. Okay, so what is EJCDC standard, right? Well, that is the Engineering Joint Contract Documents Committee. This is a standard construction conditions that has been put out there nationwide and has been updated regularly. So these standards can be changed slightly, but from a legal standpoint and from the safety of your town, we suggest that you use these. We're going to help you with agency supplemental conditions. There might be that red tape stuff that we all like or not like in many of our contracts, to help that we need to ensure that our money is spent a certain way, because when we give you money, we expect certain things to be done in exchange for that money. DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise. What is it? How do you take care of it? Is there a goal? Davis-Bacon related wages. Okay, what does that mean? That is a federal wage rate on all of our projects. Everybody might be out there hearing what this word BABA, Build America, Buy America Act. It means that all the products that you use on this project have to be built in the United States to support the economy. Construction contract approvals. Okay. Well, if you aren't an expert, again, you can lean on us to help you through this process. We're going to make sure that the contract award is appropriate and accurate. And then if something happens on the site and there's a change order that's needed, well, we're going to make sure the change order is appropriate. Make sure that the right amounts are in there and that you're not being taken for granted. Equipment purchases. Maybe you need to buy, at the end of the day, maybe you need to buy a tractor or a utility truck, or maybe it's just another piece of equipment. And then we have owner force account work. Okay, what's owner force account work? Well, it's when we approve your own staff to complete work. So if you have staff that have the capability to do TV inspections, or to go out and do payment processing, or help with the work itself for surveying, then we can allow that to happen under this account and pay you for that. Payments. How do you put a payment together? It's not like all the other payments you may be used to. And how do you take account for all the payments? Well, we'll help walk you through all of that. All right, so let's get into the good stuff, right? Where does the money come from? How can I qualify for money? Who do I talk to? Well, like Terry alluded to, often in the state of Maine, we are helping each other out. So often we have to get a project done. We are co-funding projects. So we are taking money from maybe Terry Ann's program at CDBG and mixing it with the SRF program, my program, or maybe we're adding in some local funding. All of this to make sure that you get the best possible result for your community. All that financial support is there for you. Local funding. Okay. Some people are new, so local funding. What's available to you in your community? Do you have local bond referendums? Voter approved bonds to move forward with financing a project? Do you finance projects through taxation? Do you use enterprise funds? These are established separate. It's a separate accounting and financial reporting mechanism for municipal service. Do you use reserve accounts? And this is an account that a town sets aside for replacement of assets in the future. These are all pre-planning for what's to come. Do you have wastewater impact fees or connection fees? Do you use a local bank? Do you use tax increment financing for your project? And this is a publicly financing method used to subsidize infrastructure improvements for roads and utility upgrades. Most of the tax increment financing is done in business areas usually. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, our Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. What can I offer? How can I help? Let's go ahead and find out. So the program that I run is made up of a number of different pots of money. Okay. We have a base allocation, and some of you've heard about the bipartisan infrastructure law. And then we have our sewer overflow and stormwater grants. All of these funds come together to make a very large pot of money for which you, a community, can come and get your infrastructure needs hopefully met. So we're just going to start by talking about the base funds and the bipartisan infrastructure law funds. This money is combined into one big pot of money. And what is the result of this? Well, this year's allocation is a base program anticipated of getting 6.3 million, and the bipartisan infrastructure law is going to give us roughly about $18.8 million. So between those two pots of funding, plus we have repayment funds that comes into our program, we're going to have a lot of funds to put back out there to all of you folks. Out of those two pots of money, 12.7 million is going to be put aside and given out as what we call principal forgiveness. Principal forgiveness is like grant money, is a good way to think of it. So here's just another way to look at this. And I know this is a lot of numbers on one slide, and that's kind of why I separated it, and then we're getting into the details here a little bit. So for this year's allocations, I'm looking at a total. We have our base allocations, our bipartisan infrastructure law funds. We have emerging contaminant funds, which we'll talk about later. We've got some repayment money. So how the SRF program works is if you have a loan from me, and let's just say you take out $1 million loan, and as you repay it back to me, I send that money back out again to another community. So it's revolving, okay? Continuously revolving. Then there's a state match requirement. And as you can see, the state match requirement is extremely low compared to all the money that's totaling up here. So we have roughly about $56, $57 million in program financing going out the door this year, and 12.8, 12.7 million in principal forgiveness that we talked about, which is kind of like grant money going out. Okay. So what is the timing on this? Well, currently, unfortunately, with the federal budget, everything that's going on, I can't release all of this money yet. I have to wait until the budget has been finalized. Once that's finalized, we will send out emails to every community, every town manager, every wastewater treatment plant, every superintendent will get an email from us. And the email will say, we are here and you can request a project for your community at this time, and you will have so many weeks to fill out the application. All the applications are on our website. So even if you forget, hey, I forgot, oh my gosh, I think I got an email from a person about this. Okay, what do? I can't find it. I deleted it. Just go to our website and you will see all the applications laid out right there. And you submit it all digitally. There will be a time frame for that. So I talked a little bit about the base and the bill infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure law. Okay, so what can that pay for? What can that fund, right? Infrastructure projects. We can fund wastewater infrastructure projects. We can fund stormwater infrastructure projects. We can fund landfill capping. We can fund collection system replacements, anything wastewater related, or we can also look at water use protection. We can look at a whole slew of different things in our our bucket. Our bread and butter, though, however, is wastewater. So wastewater construction is always going to rank higher than most other things. However, stormwater is getting up there because, as we all know, with what we hear out there of PFAS and PFOS and all sorts of emerging contaminants coming in and coming into our systems, sometimes the capture is in the stormwater lines, and that's where we might have to pick it up. The other thing that we do is what I alluded to earlier is fiscal sustainability plans. What is it? Well, it's a wastewater or stormwater asset management plan with kind of a water component to it. It gives you a plan moving forward to find out where your critical assets are and when they need to be replaced. It gives you an estimate on how much it would cost to get replaced, and it gets you kind of a layout to actually be able to present to your board or to a community or to a planning group on what you anticipate moving forward. Then we have a climate adaptation plan. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but as you can see, the climate is changing, our weather is changing, and we need to plan for that. Fiscal sustainability plans is principal forgiveness or grant money. It incentivizes all of you to be able to do an asset management plan with a water component to plan for the future. We decided that we would offer up to $50,000 in principal forgiveness with a requiring match of 100% by you, the client. We're saying up to $50,000. Some communities only need $5,000 and they match it with $5,000. Okay? You might be a small community, or you might be a large community like the city of Portland or Bangor, where you need $50,000 and you match it with $50,000. So it is set out there as an up to $50,000 based on your needs. Okay? At one point, we were only doing these asset management plans along with infrastructure projects. However, our clients, you, said, hey, wouldn't it make more sense if we did standalone projects that were only fiscal sustainability plans so that we could present these to the board and all of our users? These are the next step we have to make in order to move into the next step of an actual project. We said, sure, we can do that. Then last year we decided, you know what? A lot of towns and communities don't know what they have in the ground for stormwater. They know they have catch basins. They know they have some storm lines and storm pipes, but they really don't seem to have a good idea on how many catch basins they have. How many feet of storm lines do they have? What sizes are they? What condition are they in? Well, I think there used to be a catch basin there, but I think it got paved over because we know that doesn't happen. And I think there was a catch basin down in that ditch there, but I haven't seen it in years, and there's a whole lot of grass growing in there. Those are things that we need to find out, and we need to document that, and we need to be able to know our systems. And this gives you, the client, the opportunity to know your system. And again, have that really important plan to present. Okay. As promised, climate adaptation plans. Well, if you haven't heard, the climate is changing. We are having different changes in our atmosphere, just so you know. So we decided to offer up to $25,000 for an applicant to do a climate adaptation plan with no match by you. So the fiscal sustainability plan, we require a match. However, a climate adaptation plan, we do not require a match. Okay. This can be done with a capital project or as a standalone project, similar to the fiscal sustainability plan. Okay.
Brandy, can I jump in real quick on this?
Yeah,
Just because
yeah,
I
sure.
think others might be thinking this. I don't know. This is climate adaptation plan related to sewer infrastructure.
Sewer and stormwater, yes.
Okay, that's pretty open-ended, honestly. That's okay.
It very much is, yes. Yep. There's a lot of things in climate adaptation plans that we have to look at. For example, just a quick example would be there's a wastewater pump station and it's on one side of the bridge, well, we have a line that goes across the bridge, but we have this very big storm coming in. What happens if we lose power, or what happens if we lose the bridge? These are things that we can plan for. Not super extreme, but pretty close. The other thing that I like to put out there is if half of your town or community is on one side of a river and the other half is on the other side of the river and you lose power, do you have generators strategically located on both sides of the river? Often you'll find that all the generators are where? At the Public Works building. Okay, well, that doesn't help the other side of the river. If you knew that there was an event coming, maybe we should be moving half of those generators over to the other side of the river and storing them maybe at a school, or maybe there's some sort of building, a community building that we could store them at just while the event passes. The other thing that we like to point out is, again, with these pump stations, okay, well, there's this 200-year-old pine tree that has risen up right beside our pump station, and it is so big around. If we get these heavy winds, then maybe it's going to come down on the pump station, and maybe we can't move that water. So we need to think about stuff like that. And those are just a couple of examples. But we are seeing heavier precipitation. We are seeing severe storms. We've got sea level rise. We've got storm surge with sea level rise, ocean acidification, drought, ice storms, heavy snowfall, strong winds, and temperature changes. All things that we need to consider, and these are all potential hazards for our communities. You look like you have a question, Tom. You good?
Sorry, I was muted. I don't, but I just, now that you drew me out. The map behind here, are those where you've funded climate adaptation plans, where those red stars are?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Every star you see is where we have funded climate adaptation plans. And you'll notice that they're not all on the coast. Some of them are inland. We just saw a huge event up through Sunday River area, which took out a lot of bridges and things like that. And then we had, those kind of wind issues, and a lot of precipitation in a short period of time is very difficult to maintain readiness at times. So I talked a little bit about emerging contaminants, but here's where I'd like to talk a little bit more about it. We are hearing so much about emerging contaminants out there that can have harmful effects to our community, to our people, to everything that we have going on. And the most common as of late has been talking about PFAS. So the federal government gave us funds to help alleviate some of these contaminants. We looked at purchasing lab equipment, engineering studies, source water protection. Is there ways we can protect the source water? Landfills, can we cap some of these landfills that have been there for years and years and years that are no longer used? The Norway Paris landfill we capped last year. It was a huge success. It was sitting there for a number of years, and now it's capped and it's safer for everybody. Stormwater treatment, I alluded to earlier. That first flush, all of those contaminants get washed down into those storm drains and into those catch basins, and maybe we need to think about how we can treat that. Biosolids treatment, that's the end result at a wastewater treatment plant. There's biosolids at the end of the train that we have to get rid of. Well, where are we taking them? Do we need to treat them? at the wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater treatment plants are not producing PFAS or the emerging contaminants. They are the folks that are actually receiving it from the community. And so we're kind of receiving it as one big kind of area. And we need to look at that as this is like the hospital for all of the emerging contaminants. And now the hospital has to have a way to be able to treat those emerging contaminants. And so we have to look at new technology and how we can move forward treating this. These funds that we have for emerging contaminants are 100% principal forgiveness. So they are all grant money. We have 1.64 million available for communities for wastewater treatment systems and all of the projects that I identified earlier to look at some kind of treatment. One of the other areas that we have of funding is our sewer overflow and stormwater grants. So we can use these money to do treatment works. So for maybe your stormwater needs some treatment. You know, maybe you had a sanitary sewer overflow, typically called an SSO, and maybe you need to find out what happened or prevent that from happening. Maybe you have a combined sewer overflows. Maybe you need to prevent some of that from happening. Those are all things that we can study and look into and remedy with funds from this allocation. Notification systems to inform the public. Okay, so we can pay for kind of a website or a notification of any sort to go out to the public in your community that says, hey, there's been a combined sewer overflow in this area. Just be careful when you go out there. If you have a flooded road, make sure your kids aren't playing in that water because it's combined with wastewater. Things like that. Another measure to manage or reduce or treat or recapture, I know this is a lot, I hate reading these things, but stormwater or subsurface drainage water eligibility. Okay, so if there's a way that we can help manage or reduce or treat or capture any of these products, we want to be able to help you do that. Again, what's required of you? Well, there is a cost share, of course, right? This one does require a 55% match in cost share. However, here's the catch. If you get an SRF loan or grant with us, that can be considered the match. Or your match could in fact be what we call in-kind services that we went over a little bit earlier, where maybe you have some of your staff that would be willing to go out and identify these areas, and we could use that as the match. Are you a rural community? Well, this federal pot of money is a rural community is under 10,000 in population. There's so many towns in the state of Maine that are under 10,000 in population. Financially distressed, well, we have a lot of that here in the state of Maine. And 20% green infrastructure is a goal to try to get. Another program that we have is our state infrastructure grants. We don't have a lot of them at the moment. However, I just wanted to point it out so that if you do see a bond referendum out there coming to fruition and you do see anything, this is kind of the background of it, where we can give out planning grants, design grants, up to 25%. We can fund construction projects up to 80%. We can do construction assistance on affordability. The fund source is usually, like I said, a state bond referendum, or another federal agent assistance program like what we've had on currently is ARPA, American Recovery Investment Act. There's been so many acronyms out there. The next program that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, and I'm hoping that Tom will allow us to present solely on this program next in the future, is a small community grant program. And a lot of you guys, LPIs, our CEOs, our town managers get a lot of these calls in the rural areas. And the small community grant program is a program put in place to help resolve failing subsurface wastewater systems with environmental impacts. So the program itself is a pass-through to fix or replace septic systems. Okay? It's not for new septic systems. It is to fix or replace existing septic systems. This program does roughly 35 to 40 septic systems per year, totaling about $750,000, which is pretty significant when the other thing that you have to understand is currently this program is to help residents with a federal income of less than $40,000. Less than $40,000. There's so many people out there that make less than $40,000 a year. We have a lot of elderly, a lot of young folks that are out there that need to replace failing septic systems and don't have anywhere to go. All right. Now, I said less than $40,000. However, we are currently in the process of changing that threshold. And we're changing that threshold to be a percent of the state's median household income so that more residents will qualify for this. What are the priorities of this particular program? Well, we look at, first and foremost, does it protect the public drinking water, shellfish areas, subsurface surface water, sorry, and is it a public nuisance? Okay. All these things are things that we look at before we give out funds to assist this program. Now, I know that was a tremendous amount of information in a relatively short period of time, but this is my contact information. And if you need any help whatsoever, first and foremost, give us a call. If I can't help you or one of my staff members can't help you, then we might actually get together with Terry Ann at CDBG, or we would call rural development on your behalf just to find the right financial help for you at your community.
Thank you, Brandy. Questions on this one? There's a lot here. This is a fairly new subject to me. Right off the bat, I see a question from Hope. Hope, go for it.
Hi, yes. Brandy, thank you so much for that presentation. A lot of helpful information there. My question is in regards to PFAS. So quite a few communities up here in the Penobscot-Piscataquis area, they have these areas, of PFAS areas like identified, like say, places where stores used to be, or what is known as carpet graveyards. And they're wondering, like, are there going to be funds to clean this up, or is it a brownfields question, or can funds for PFOS containment be used in conjunction with brownfields? There's just like a lot of questions, and I was wondering if like you have any of those answers, or a way to direct those communities who ask those kinds of questions.
Absolutely. It's a great question. Everybody has questions about this and is worried about this. For your specific question, it is definitely brownfields that would have the funds to help out with that situation. Our emerging contaminant funds is for stormwater protection or wastewater protection or biosolids itself. But for you and your question, I would strongly recommend that you contact our brownfields staff at DEP.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Brandy, I have two questions.
Sure.
If anyone else can pipe up. The first one's an easy one. Communities, the rural communities under 10,000. I'm going to go on a limb and say most wastewater systems in Maine are in communities with less than 10,000 people. Is that okay? And then I was
Yep.
thinking, what about regional wastewater systems? I was thinking about Bangor. You know, they include maybe Hamden, Brewer, Veazey, you know, towns that are under that 10,000. I assume they also qualify as long as it's in that geography.
Yes, so when you have a combined regional system like that, it's a little bit more difficult, but if that particular town, like Hamden, maybe they own and operate their own collection system. And so what we would do is we would do their affordability based on Hamden's
Okay.
geography.
Okay. And then the other question was a tougher one, but the amount of programs you rattled off was pretty huge, and the amount of
It is.
eligibility, and the dollar amount though seemed big, or it was around 56 million or so, seemed big. These are very expensive projects. A ballpark, and again, shows my ignorance on the subject. About how many active projects do you think you and your staff are managing at a given time?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would say there's a huge need out there. Example is last year we had requests for $392 million in one construction year for projects. Okay.
Okay.
And we were only able to help 14%,
Okay.
which isn't a large number. I am working to try to increase our financial portfolio right now to hopefully be able to fund a lot more. We have 11 people on staff. There is, and that is including myself. We have the majority, we have 8, let me see, we have 9 engineers and 2 financial staff members. And we are all here to help. Our staff, we run on average about, last year we closed on 96 million in construction loans with that many staff. And so our staff members are running on average about 35 projects each. And then we have our small community grant program that has a lot of projects too, but smaller projects. Yep.
Thank you. Questions for Brandy, or I see Terry Ann is still on from DECD. So any questions about either program, feel free to pipe up or put them in the chat. And not seeing any. Thank you, Brandy. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Terry Ann, both of you. Excellent. I'm sure we all learned a lot. So everyone else, stay tuned. Next month, a month from today, we'll be talking about recruiting volunteers, and we'll have a 15-year veteran of recruiting volunteers presenting for us. Any questions or suggestions for topics, send them in. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We'll see you next month.
Thank you again, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye now.
you.
Thank you, everyone.